9 months later, got hit by a bus out here and died. A month after they moved back, I got a knock on my front door, and it was Julie. She basically had a gift for me, and she basically said, "You've saved our lives." If you had a doctor tap you on the shoulder and said, "Yesterday you've got cancer and you're going through chemotherapy, potentially you can't work for 12 months, 18 months. What you're going to live off in the meantime?"
Do you think there's an advantage, though, that you could say, for example, leave, say, from the UK to the Middle East for 5 years, generate loads of wealth, come back, not pay tax on that money, and then you're pretty much set up in a good position then where you can maybe buy the house you want, the stuff you want, and then it's less of a problem at that point?
If you're structured with it, yes. But again, the biggest trap I see so many people make when they come out here is they get sucked into this Dubai lifestyle. If your tax bill's reduced by 100 grand a year, but your expenses have gone up by 100 grand a year, well, you're actually no better off, are you?
So why do you need to memorise who won the Battle of Hastings or what the date was? Because I can find it like quicker than you can tell me.
Yeah.
So like it doesn't really matter anyway. The way the system and society is built, do you think it's almost, and the tax system is potentially, it's structured against people trying to get financial freedom in terms of the way maybe it tries to push people into 9-to-5 jobs, mortgages, that type of quote unquote picket fence type of lifestyle? Today I can tell you this is going to be a killer episode. We've got Joe Woodhouse here, who's a finance expert from the UK. Joe has a massive amount of experience and knowledge to go take us through in terms of basically what to do with your money, what not to do with your money, and basically how to increase your wealth. So a big thank you for your time today, Joe.
Likewise, thanks for having me.
First thing I want to ask you is, what do you see the big mistake people under 30 make with their finances? So we work, and a lot of people listening to this podcast are probably in the age bracket of 20 to 30 years old. One of the things I see happens is a lot of them pissing the money up on the wall.
Exactly that. I would say overspending. So especially, we're in Dubai now, like the glitz and glam capital of the world. So, and one of the things that a lot of people make the mistake of out here is keeping up with the Joneses. So there's always a better watch to buy. There's always a better car to drive. You can always upgrade your flights. There's always money to be spent here, and it's very easy to spend money here. And that is the biggest mistake I see people make, is that they come out here, then all of a sudden they start living like, my old man calls them 10 bob millionaires. They start living this millionaire lifestyle without actually getting the basics and the foundations set first. So one of the first things I say to anybody, especially anyone that's not saving enough, is save and then spend. So it's paying yourself first. So your salary comes in, or if you're a business owner, like I'm guessing most of your audience are, you pay yourself a set salary from your business that goes into bank account number one. And then from there, you have a set amount which goes to your savings and your investments, and obviously your bills, and then you spend what's left. You'll not notice much of a difference with your lifestyle, but what you will notice is that you will start growing wealth quite considerably, instead of spending and then saving if what's left at the end of the month. Because we've been in as 20s ourselves, it doesn't happen, does it?
We mentioned something there for me, which is actually a bit of a personal gripe, and I actually think once you go through the threshold of it, it's very difficult to go back. At what point do you think people can justify paying for business class flights?
I fly business class. However, I've got things in place that I've got all my financial goals in place, and I'm on track to achieve them. So the big thing for me is looking after your future self. So it's make sure that you're protected today and for the future. And once you've got all that boxed off, yeah, by all means, then if you can afford it, fly business class. Do what you want with your money. And when it comes to, so if we sort of break this down, I'm a massive believer in just keeping things super simple. So I call it sort of 5 steps to financial freedom. So the first is do a budget. So spending less than what you earn, which sounds super simple, but so many people get this wrong. And people get really flustered when you say the word budget. So again, let's relate it to your audience, business owners. You've got a business. Do you do a profit and loss?
Meticulously.
Right. All the budget is just a profit and loss for your household. That is it. Pay yourself first, then spend what's left. Secondly is family protection. So I'll tell you a story. So Julie and Steve called. So some clients of mine lived out here in Dubai, and I've always been very passionate about life insurance, about making sure that your family's protected, because if you die, it's not just you that dies, it's your income that dies with you for the next 20, 30 years. And I had met a couple here years ago. He didn't believe in life insurance. His dog sitters, next door neighbours, brothers, cousins, sisters' mother had it. It never paid out, therefore it's a waste of money. But I tried to explain to him how important it was. His wife got on board with it. She was pecking his head for a while. They never did it. I then got a phone call a couple of months later saying, right, come round to the house this week. I've talked him into it. We're going to get you sorted. Went round. He begrudgingly signed all the paperwork, took out this life insurance. 9 months later, got hit by a bus out here and died. The insurance policy, I mean, Julie's very good friends of ours now, and her daughters, Annabelle and Mia. So it then basically, it paid out insurance for the girls to go back to the UK. They're from Leeds, buy a house, gave her enough money so they can then have an income for the rest of their life and pay for the girls' education when they hit 18. A month after they moved back, I got a knock on my front door, and it was Julie, and she basically had a gift for me, and she basically said, "You've saved our lives." Now, that for me, every time I tell this story, that for me is the importance of life insurance, basically, because like I say, it's not just you that dies, it's your income that also dies with you forever. And if you have children, do you want the best for your children? The answer is always going to be yes. If you weren't here, would you still want that life for your wife and your children? Because their life doesn't end just because yours does, but your income does.
Do you think if someone is a guy or a girl who's not got kids and they're not married, life insurance is something they should still get?
Waste of time, waste of money. Because you don't need, why do you care?
Okay.
So if you've not got any dependents, why do you give a shit who gets your money? But what is really important is critical illness cover. So again, that's an insurance policy that pays out in the event of you being diagnosed with a serious illness. Because, again, business owners, you are your source of income. I mean, you may have things in place that your business can run itself to a certain extent, but let's be honest, you're the face of it. So, I mean, we had this conversation downstairs. You broke your foot 8 days ago, which amazes me that you're back on it already. But obviously that affected your business in a short term. If you got diagnosed with, and I'll not wish it on anyone, but if you had a doctor tap you on the shoulder and said yesterday you've got cancer and you're going through chemotherapy, potentially you can't work for 12 months, 18 months. What you're going to live off in the meantime? So you can take an insurance policy out that if you get diagnosed with one of these serious illnesses, it pays out a lump sum, which then means that as well as focusing on recovery, you've not got that financial stress as well, because you've got this pot of money there, what you can live off in the meantime. And if you look at the stats, Cancer Research UK, 1 in 2 of us will get cancer at some point in our lifetimes. So you or I, toss a coin, you or me are going to get cancer at some point. Those stats are frightening. So don't leave it to chance, because you can, for a small amount, you can protect against that.
Quick interjection into the podcast. If you're an online coach who's looking to scale the business, get their first 5K month, 10K month, or even get to 50 to 100K a month, we have helped hundreds of trainers do this at this point, and I've personally generated over $14 million online in the fitness industry. We have a proven methodology that works, provided you're willing to do the work. Now, if you want to book in a free business audit, we'll break down exactly where you are now, where you want to go, and what's currently holding you back. Hit the link below this video and below the podcast to find exactly how we can help you. Pick a time and we will walk you through the process of where your business is at and what exponential growth looks like. Now, back to the podcast. To be fair, that is something previously I did have set up in the UK before I left, and I probably need to get reset up here. But I think one of the things I'm personally doing is like accumulating assets to provide income to almost substitute that. So a question for you is, what is the definition of financial freedom for you?
Financial freedom for me is having enough income generating assets that pay you an income to fund yours and or your family's lifestyle, to live life on your terms.
And what do you think is your preferential route people take to try and get to that?
My clients or people in general?
Let's go for both.
Right, okay. So I'm a big believer in investing in things what pay you an income. So, and for me, typically, there's 3 ways to do that. There is, take a step back from that first of all. So the way I sort of look at it is you've got saving, speculating, investing. So saving is money in your bank account. It's your 6-month emergency pot, which I always tell people to have before you even think about investing. So this is if the boiler breaks down. This is family emergency, car breaks down. So it's money in a separate bank account which takes care of those day-to-day emergencies. So that's saving. You're never going to earn any interest on it, but you can get it straight away. Secondly is speculating. So this is buying something, or if this is buying something what has no value to you today. So if you take gold, you can buy a gold bar today. You can hold that gold bar for 1,000 years. It will never pay you a penny during that time. In order for you to eat, you need to sell that gold bar in its entirety to some other fool that hopefully paid you more than what you paid for it. So that for me is speculating. It's gambling in a way. I also look at cryptocurrency the exact same way as that as well, which gets me a few haters and baiting online, as I'm sure you can imagine. And then thirdly for me is investing. So actually investing for me is investing in something what gives you 2 bites of the cherry. So while you hold that, it pays you an income, and then the day you come to sell it, it's also had the opportunity to grow in value as well. So property, you rent a property out, that's your income, property grows in value. Stock market, while you're investing in the stock market, the companies you're investing in are paying a dividend, stock market grows in time, growth in value. And the third way is bonds. So all a bond is essentially, it's just a loan. So if you or I need money, we go to a bank and we get a bank loan. Companies can do that, or they can issue bonds, and governments can issue bonds as well, where they go, right, Mr. and Mrs. Investor, give me X amount of pounds, and in return, I will pay you this pre-agreed interest rate over this set time frame, and then at the end of it, you'll get your money back. Yes, there's no capital growth with bonds, but it's seen as a lower risk way of investing in these companies what are on the stock market. So again, it depends on what your appetite to risk is.
With something like bonds, what's the traditional interest rate return?
It varies from anything from 2-3% on your seriously low risk UK government bonds, all the way to double digits for, so depending what company it is.
What would be your advice for people looking to hedge against inflation? Because in my opinion, with what's also happening right now with interest rates being cut, money being printed again, inflation is going to fucking shoot up again in probably 12 to 18 months. What should people be doing to maybe try and protect against their losing with their purchasing power?
Same, just invest in these income generating assets. So invest into property, invest into the markets. I mean, a great way to invest in the stock market is on a monthly basis, because arguably one of the downsides of the stock market is the volatility, the daily volatility that you get. But if you're investing each and every month, you're negating that, because if you invest £1,000 today and the unit price is £1, you buy 1,000 units. If next month stock market crashes, new unit price is 50 pence, yes, your 1,000 is now worth 500, but if you invest £1,000 again, next month you buy 2,000 units, month after, so on and so forth. And then when the markets return, as they always do, time and time again, all those cheaper units that you've been buying will be worth a lot more. So, and again, and this is what I say to clients, that if you really understand that, you'll never lose money in the stock market, because a falling market is the greatest gift to a monthly investor. It's like the January sales of investing.
I'm going to give you an example. I know you don't like cryptocurrency, but I'm a big believer in Bitcoin. Just hit $102,000 today. So an example of this is I bought Solana in the last bull run, like 120 all the way up to 250. It crashed to like 10, 12. I had 6 figures worth. And I was like, well, if I bought it at 250, I only bought a small amount then. At that point, I was like, it's on like the biggest discount it's ever going to fucking go. So I started buying it again, just like dollar cost averaging in at like $10 to $15 for maybe like 3-4 months. And it's just shot back all the way up to 240, 250 now. I think one of the most difficult things for people to handle is their emotions around money and fear of loss. What would be your advice to people with that? Because like you said there, when the stock
set
market
a standing order up, never check it.
Just don't look at it.
Don't look at it. Lock yourself out your account if you want. The people that check it most often are the ones that make the most mistakes. Fidelity did a study a few years ago.
I think I've heard this.
Right, and they did a 20-year study. The best investors over the last 20 years were dead.
Or lost their passwords to the account.
Dead.
Oh, okay.
Because when they actually looked these people up, turns out they died. So they couldn't check their account. They couldn't do anything with it. And it just shows you with any market, even with crypto, it's about time in the market, not timing the market. Because human emotion gets in the way. And this is why I always say to people, if you are going to invest on a regular basis, don't tell yourself you're going to transfer X amount in the first of every month, because you won't, because we're human and we make silly mistakes. Because I can guarantee you what you're going to do Sunday night is you're going to send it Monday morning, you're going to start Googling what's been happening in the news. Trump's coming, oh, is that good or is that bad? Bitcoin's on a rally at the minute, oh, is that good or is that bad? Shall I wait a week? And then that's when people make mistakes. So just set a standing order for the first of every month that leaves your account and automatically gets invested.
What percentage of your income do you think you should invest?
Oh, depends on the individual. I would flip that on its head and I'd say, why are you investing first of all?
To achieve financial freedom so you don't have to work anymore.
Okay, do you know what your financial freedom number is?
Yeah. 10 million.
Right, okay.
Like net worth.
Okay, at what age?
38.
Right, okay.
I've got 3 years.
So, do you know what that means you need to put in away now in order to achieve that?
I haven't worked in terms from a savings perspective. I'm working on a projection in terms of accumulation of investments.
Okay,
And
that's
then
what
also my predicted growth in terms of my business. Not even like not aggressive growth of business, but like 10% a year over the next 2 to 3 years, which I think is very realistic for an online business.
Okay.
Bear in mind, I doubled it in the last 12 months.
Okay, and are you on track to achieve that?
Yeah.
Then you're investing enough. That's how I would work it out.
Okay.
So again, work backwards. So let's work out what the goal is, whether it be children's education when they're 18, whether it be financial freedom or retirement or whatever you want to call it, different buzzwords on the internet these days, obviously, but let's work out what that means. So if you want that take it a bit, for most people it's a little bit longer than 3 years away, which fair play, take me out of tier. But let's say your age, you want to say, right, from age 55 I want to be financially independent. Right, where do I want to be living? Where do I want to go on holiday? How many times a year do I want to go on holiday? Do I want to fly business class? Or do I want to be shit in a bucket in a tent? Like, what does a holiday look like to you? Because it's different to different people. What car do you want to drive? How often do you want to change that car? Do you want more than one car? One for you, one for your wife? Do you want to be able to treat the kids, treat the grandkids? What do you want to do at the weekend? What restaurants do you want to go to? What golf club do you want to play at? And once we know what that life's going to look like, we can then start putting price tags on everything and work out, right, Charlie, therefore you need 10 grand a month, you need 15 grand a month to live the life that you want. Okay, great, we know that. We now need to, but that's today. So we'll factor inflation into that, because 10 grand a month today in 20 years will probably be 20 grand a month. Then okay, so in order to keep this lifestyle sustainable, what pot do we need? That's your 10 million number. Once we know that, we can then funnel that back and say, right, at achievable returns, that 10 million, which is now 20 million with inflation, by the way, in 20 years' time, right, how much does that mean you need to be putting away today? And if you're not on track for that, whether that's 15%, 20%, 25% of your income, whatever that may be, we say, right, something's got to give. Either we have to change something in your lifestyle now so you can invest more, or we need to start crossing things off this dream list that you've got.
Would you also add into that, I think sometimes some people, they don't have a spending problem, they have an income problem. So like, obviously if you can bring in more on the front in terms of revenue, in terms of business or work or whatever you do, that can obviously like balance out, provide obviously you're not just burning out the back end. Because something I see a lot is people start making more money, but then they pull their lifestyle up to the new income level they're at straight away.
And it's very difficult to come back from that. I did exactly the same. So I moved to Abu Dhabi when I was 22-year-old, started earning more money than I can ever imagine. And I'm in financial services. I went from working at Lloyds Bank in the UK, being on a very good salary for a 22-year-old, to moving out to Abu Dhabi and then earning an insane amount of money, but it was commission only. And that for me was like, it was like the penny just dropped. I'm like, right, hang on. So you're telling me if I work harder than him, I get paid more? Like, yeah. And I work an extra day a week than her, I get paid an extra 25%. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And I've always been a numbers man. So I knew, and this was back in the days when I was cold calling to generate business before I started diving into social media world. I knew how many calls I needed, how many numbers I needed to get to to make a call, how many calls I needed to make to get a bum on a seat, how many bums a seat I needed to get a client, and I knew what my average client size was. So I went down this very dangerous rabbit hole of stopped looking at things as monetary value. It was just another deal. That business class flight weren't $3,000, it was just one more deal. So it's just 30 more phone calls next week I need to make to get that. So I'll just work a bit harder next week. I'll stay an extra hour on Monday night and pay for it. That suite in that hotel isn't $5,000, it's just 2 deals. That watch isn't $10,000, it's an extra 3.5 deals. So then in my head, I was working out, right, how many calls do I need to make to pay for that? And it were all right when it were all right, until it wasn't. So in 2016, I changed firms. This new firm wasn't quite what we expected. I didn't get paid for 6 months. It was when we voted the Brexit vote. Yeah. The pound lost a third of its value. A lot of companies out here were uncertain. Expats were concerned with the job security. No one was investing. A lot of people were leaving. And simultaneously to that, my wife and I were going through IVF. And we're very lucky now. I've got twin boys who are 6-year-old and a 3-year-old daughter, but all my children were born through IVF because we couldn't conceive naturally. And this was during the time when we were having failed round after failed round after failed round of IVF. Here in the Middle East, where there's no financial support, there's no NHS, it's on you. And we were spending upward of £15,000 per round of IVF. I quickly ran out of money. And initially, with this victim mentality, why me? Why can't we have kids? Why is this company shit? Why is the market shit? Why is no one buying? And it was only when I then sat back, looked at this huge house we were renting in Abu Dhabi with a private pool. I got full-time housemaid, I got full-time driver, we were flying business class everywhere, we were staying in 5-star hotel suites every weekend. And I went through, and I took accountability at that point. And I went through the very painful process, which I'd advise everyone to do, who was an expat. I worked out what I'd earned since I moved to Abu Dhabi and what I got left. So the difference is, guess what? This is what you've spent, Joe. And that for me were a massive wake-up call. And that was when I started taking my own advice when it comes to budgeting and saving and then spending. So I agree. There's 2 ways you can invest, and we digress a lot there. Yeah. 2 ways you can invest more. One is you earn more, spend less, or 2 is you earn more. But I think that's a very dangerous game, with the spending less, because a lot of people, when you earn more, your lifestyle goes up straight away. But instead of that, if you earn more, why not just invest that difference and stick to a certain lifestyle? And every year you get your pay rise if you're employed. When your business has had a very good year, invest that difference, because future you will thank you for it.
I can say from why I'm laughing is I've sort of gone through that phase of not spending excessively, but maybe getting a bit like reckless more than I would, and you suddenly realise, like, why the fuck am I buying all this shit? I don't
Your
really care.
industry's as bad as mine for it.
Yeah, so it's and I think there's also a line in the sand where, like, once you do start to earn certain amounts of money, like, you should also not persecute yourself and be able to buy some of the things you wanted. So, like, I really like cars. It took me a really long time to, like, buy a supercar that I really wanted, but I was in a position I could do so, and it wasn't like a massive problem.
But this again goes back to, if you've got things in place, if you know what your goals are for the future and you're on track to achieve them, fair play, do that. But don't do that. Don't buy yourself a 911 or a Lamborghini or whatever it is you're driving if you ain't got a pot to piss in. Yes, you're earning very good money, but you've got nothing in the bank, you've got nothing invested, you've got nothing planned for the future. Sort that out first.
So this is what I'm paranoid about, which is why I push as much as I can into real estate and other investments. Crypto, I'm not a big fan of. My plan is to pull that out there and push that into real estate, though. So then, like, that's
right.
safe.
Okay.
So
let's just let me explain this. Right. So, my biggest issue with crypto. Okay, crypto is the best marketing that the financial service industry has ever done. It's genius, because what they've actually done with cryptocurrencies, and it happened with NFTs a few years ago, which they're all quiet now, funnily enough, but it made it trendy and it made it accessible. But my issue with it is far too many people are putting their life savings into something 100%. Which is, let's be honest, it's very fucking high risk in it.
It's wild. Like my portfolio is up and down 100 grand a day, like most days. And
So-
you have to be able to like tolerate massive 10, 20, 50% drops and not lose your mind.
Yeah, but a lot of the, especially the younger kids, they're not invested in the stock market. They're not in any sort of quote unquote stable investments. Yet they're putting their life savings into crypto, into something, one, they don't understand. Two, they haven't got the foundations laid first. And three, they will see their arse if it drops a considerable amount. So that's my issue with it. And when you've got butchers and bakers and candlestick makers telling you what to do with your life savings, for me, that's when you should either run the other way or do a hell of a lot of your own research. And you've got Love Island, ex-Love Island rejects and Love Island stars launching cryptocurrencies and advising you what to do with your money. It's like, come on.
That for me is a sign of like the top when like the taxi driver starts asking you about like, oh, have you seen Bitcoin price or whatever? So
I get it.
It's
When they find out what I do, oh, my mate Dave's done this. I'm like, oh, just put my earphones in.
the question I was going to say to you, the way I try and look at the game of that is crypto's obviously very high risk but high return, is put it in the less risky as much as there is in that, with a goal of appreciating that as quickly as possible, pulling it out and then putting it into low risk assets like real estate. They're just going to appreciate and then just cash flow, and then just rinse and repeat that through the different cycles.
So what's your definition of once it's at its peak value?
Well, my plan isn't to be at peak value, it's probably be out way before then. So like it's from where we are now, maybe like 3-4 months time.
Okay. And have you got a number where it needs to hit in order for you to pull out?
No, I'm going to start. So like I would go off like off Fibonacci's off of a trading platform. So I've got like sell figures where I'm going to start taking like 10% out of each of them every month to slowly start coming out of the market. And what is difficult, and actually I would give advice to people on this, is that like I sold some, I hit price target on something last month. And I'm like, I've got all the cash sitting there. I'm like, I'm so itchy to want to put the money back in to try and make more. But where I've made that mistake before, you learn from mistakes and pain more than anything else, which is also why I think something like cryptocurrency isn't something you should do unless you're very controlled in terms of the way you think. Like if you're impulsive with stuff like that, you'll lose all your money.
Yeah, and avoid what the latest trend is. And again, I've got another story of that, or I made a silly mistake with that. So 6 months before we got married, I got, this was what, 10 years ago? So 10 years ago, I got 35 grand sat aside to pay for the rest of the wedding. Everything that needed paying off. 6 months before we got married, I got offered a hot tip on an oil exploration company based in Kazakhstan. What can go wrong, eh? So I did the very adult thing and put our entire wedding fund into it. And
Did you tell your wife?
no. And if you'd met my wife, and I adore her for it, one of the things I love about her is she's very strong-willed, she speaks her mind, she's her own person. I love that about her, apart from when I'm on the receiving end. And it just tanked. It went down and it went down and it went down. And 3 months before we got married, I basically pulled out, lost more or less everything, and I had to have that conversation with her, which didn't go down very well, as I'm sure you can imagine. And what that taught me is, one, not to get caught up in the latest trend, two, to look at investing for the long term. It's not a quick fix, obviously. Three, don't bet your wedding fund 6 months before you get married.
Do you have anything else people should do in terms of systems for the finances? So like one of the things that's personally helped me is I use a 10-year like net worth tracker where I track everything every single month, all the assets I have. And like most days I'll go and like track all the cash I have, everything I have, like whatever. Because I think just being aware of what's going on with your money and also the flows in and out of your accounts is really useful.
Yep.
Do you have anything else that people should do?
Yeah, I mean, track it obviously is a big one. I mean, we use sort of industry based software, like we do full cash flow modeling, so we can actually work out different eventualities of, if the market crashes, what does that mean? If an emergency comes up of X, what does that mean? If you sell the property, if you upgrade the property, again, we can look at all sorts of different scenarios. If little Jimmy goes to university, if little Jimmy doesn't go to university, so we can factor all this in. But there's loads of retirement calculators online. There's loads of financial calculators what you can use. Emma is a really good one, budgeting app in the UK to track your spending, and most banks offer it now as well, because again, banks have cottoned on. That's what people want. So most of your online, especially like your online banks now, will offer tracking tools, which are invaluable. And if you are overspending, I always say to people, okay, have you ever kept a time diary?
Yes.
Because you're obviously very productive, right? I do it every now and again. Fucking hate it. I hate it.
That's like me with the expenses thing, because I did it for 1 month. I was like, fuck. And I was like...
But for an entire week, what I will do, I will write down what I'm doing in 5-minute slots throughout the day. It's such a laborious exercise, but it stops you hiding. I'm too busy. It stops all that, because you can sit there and work out, well, actually, between the hours of 10 and 11, although I felt busy, I actually achieved very little. So it's having a structure in place with that. I tell people to do this for your money. Keep a money diary, and it exposes you, and you'll be amazed where you're spending your money.
What do you think are some of the traps people will spend more money and they don't realise? And I'll actually say one thing from a business perspective that I do is I cancel all my credit cards every like 6 months, because we seem to accumulate subscriptions for like softwares that we don't even use anymore. And I'm like, why the fuck are we still paying $300 for this thing that like we haven't used? So it's easier just to cancel the cards, and then you suddenly like, oh, this is expired. Can you sort it out?
Yeah. That sounds like a lot of headache though.
Yeah, but then other people have to like deal with it. It's not that.
Get your people to track your expenses.
Yeah, but it's also having to go in and cancel something. So the point, even when we had accounts where like we couldn't find the logins for some of the softwares, it's like the only option at that point is then like, okay, we'll just cancel the card.
Yeah. Do you know what? I actually do tell people to, again, have a spring clean of your direct debits and your expenses. And because I can guarantee anybody there'll be stuff on there you've got no idea what it is. And I do actually tell people with that, not to cancel your credit card, but cancel the payments to them. And if it's important, they'll write to you.
With that in mind, is there anything from a savings perspective in terms of, do you think you should just try and save a lump sum every month? Do you think you should do it weekly? Do it yearly? How do you recommend people put money away?
Depends how often you get paid.
Okay.
So I would stick to that frequency. So I'm guessing yourself, money's coming in and out all the time. It's not consistent as such, unless you've got monthly recurring revenue with clients. So mine's pretty similar, to be fair. So how I manage that is so from my business, I pay myself a salary. So from my business, my wife and I are directors of it. Standing orders go from the business on the 1st of every month to our bank accounts. That's our salary. So I would track it that way.
If it's like, say for example, in my business model, we have certain months we make way more money. Would you adjust and pay yourself more over those months rather than just accumulate loads of cash in your business?
Again, different for me. I'm in the UK, so from a tax perspective, any money I take from the business, Joe and Laura Woodhouse have to pay income tax on that. So we actually invest a lot of our money in the business name. So from the business, we have sort of standing orders that go into the regular investments we've got, and then as that account builds up, I also do a sweep of it, typically at least every 6 months, but most times every quarter, when I go, right, this is my emergency pot, what I need within the business, how much cash have I got over and above that then gets swept into the investments through the property portfolio we've got, the stock market and the other stuff.
Okay, let's talk about that. How much emergency cash do you think people need to have in their business? And personally, you said 6 months.
I'd say 6 months for both.
Okay.
And tax. So I would always put away your tax bill as well.
Do you see a lot of people come unstuck with that? Because one of the things I see in a lot of the audience listen to this, people make like money very quickly, but they have like a complete ignorance to the fact they're going to have a looming tax bill that's going to come.
Yep. So what I do is every payment that comes in, I've got a very good admin team around me, so every payment that comes in, 25% of that gets swept into my quote-unquote tax account. So, and again, everything's about psychology in it and how you view things. Like, something either happens to you or it happens for you. So I actually see tax season, so my tax year end for my business is also New Year. Merry Christmas. But I actually see that as a positive, because I put 25% into that account of every payment that comes in. Then I obviously expense whatever I can expense. My accountant's a wizard. He keeps my tax bill as low as humanly possible and legally possible. And then at the end of it, when I've got, right, Joe, this is how much is in your tax account, but this is how much tax you actually need to pay, that difference there, it's like a Christmas bonus for me. and that then gets invested into another property or into the markets, or depending where we're at.
So speaking of tax, people who are looking to try and create wealth quickly, do you think they should try and move to areas which are more tax advantageous? So the biggest cost you're going to have in life generally is going to be tax. If you can alleviate that from the table, and your goal is financial freedom, provided you don't take your lifestyle to become a degenerate and do things you shouldn't be doing, you can get there a lot quicker.
As I say, not as I do.
Yeah. I actually think some people need to go through that learning experience a little bit. Like, same thing I spoke about the car things. Like, I don't really care about the car. It's actually a bit annoying now sometimes. Like, things go wrong with it all the time. Like, once you have these things, you don't really care anymore. Yeah. But like, or go and buy the thing when you want to, but you'll experience that. And I think people need to get that first-hand experience. But do you think people should move, particularly if they're younger? Because if you can generate wealth quicker when you're younger, the compound effect on that is crazy over time.
From a numbers standpoint, yes, but at the same time, you need to be happy with wherever it is you live in. So we lived in Abu Dhabi for 10 years. We had 10 great years here. We moved back to the UK January 2020 for mainly family reasons. And again, we love it back there. Do I pay more tax? Yes. But on the flip side of that, are my living costs a hell of a lot lower in South Yorkshire than they were in Abu Dhabi? Yes. So from a financial standpoint, we're not actually that worse off than what we were when we lived in Abu Dhabi.
Do you think there's an advantage, though, that you could say, for example, leave, say, from the UK to the Middle East for 5 years, generate loads of wealth, come back, not pay tax on that money, and then you're pretty much set up in a good position then where you can maybe buy the house you want, the stuff you want, and then it's less of a problem at that point?
If you're structured with it, yes. But again, the biggest trap I see so many people make when they come out here is they get sucked into this Dubai lifestyle, which completely negates the benefit of being here. If your tax bill's reduced by 100 grand a year, but your expenses have gone up by 100 grand a year, well, you're actually no better off, are you? Got some cracking stories along the way, but other than that, what's it for?
What's your process in terms of maybe helping people set out their goals? Because I think a lot of people aren't very clear in terms of where they want to be financially. Agreed. Do you have like a certain like roadmap or a framework to help people with that?
Yeah, so basically just map it out. So it's like, right, what expenses have we got coming up over the next 12 months, 24 months, 5 years? If I'm speaking to clients here in Dubai, it's like, right, how long do you want to be here for? And then it's looking at things like, right, either if you're a couple, you know, children, like, are we planning children? So it's having that conversation with people, like, do you want to get married? When are we going to get married? How quickly after getting married do you want children? How many children do you want? Then factoring that cost in, because schooling's not cheap out here. Then it's like, right, okay, in 3 years you've got Charlie Jr., then in 21 years, Charlie Jr. is going to university. Where do you want him to go to university? I want him to go back to the UK. Right, okay, do you know what the cost of that is? It's then factoring that in. Then alongside that, it's like, right, at what age do you want the option not to have to work anymore? Right, this age, right. Are you aware that's bang in the middle of when Charlie's at university? Oh yeah, never thought of it like that. Right, okay, so we need to make sure that not only that's taken care of, but also that's taken care of in advance as well. Right, then what does this lifestyle look like? Have you got any other goals? I want to sell my business, or I want to create a business, or I want to do this, or I want to build my dream home. Right, fantastic. What is this dream home? What does it look like? Let's paint this picture together. Then we can put some numbers around it and then funnel it back. And then, again, just keep it simple of, look, this is what we need to be doing now in order to tick all these boxes off along the way. And if that's miles out, which it is with a lot of people, to be fair, because they do get a little bit excited when we're going through this process, which is fair enough. That's what it's there for. It's to dream big. Then it's like, right, okay, what's going to give? Like, this 7-bedroom house you want, are we going to make that 4-bedroom house? Or are we going to stop spunking as much money on every Saturday afternoon at brunch, getting bottles of vodka with sparklers in it at the local beach club? So it's then working out what your priorities are.
With that, you mentioned about Charlie Jr. and having kids. Do you think there's a big hole in terms of education and finances
Massively.
with children? Because I remember in 2007 when I went to sixth form college, like the financial education stuff we had was a joke. And also, like, respectfully, I'm like, the way I'm inclined is only listen to people who have like done the thing I want to do. Yep. So if you're a teacher and you earn 30 grand a year and you're talking to me about how to like have financial freedom, like, dude, you work as a teacher.
Yep.
Like, so you clearly do not understand this model, which I think was the value of having educators and people like that, like yourself in the world who can put this right information out. Do you think that's something that's going to change, and how do you plan on teaching that to your children?
So I hope it does change, and it's something I campaign quite a lot about, because when I left school, I could memorise the periodic table. I could find X in any triangle, yet I didn't have any life skills that I learnt from school. So I didn't know how to sell, or negotiation. I know selling's a dirty word for a lot of people, which it drives me insane, but negotiation skills. Like, you are negotiating in every aspect of your life. I'm selling my kids to go to bed when I want them to go to bed. I am selling my kids to eat the vegetables. I am selling my wife to go on a date on Friday night. I am selling every single day at work. You're selling yourself when you go in an interview. Like, you're constantly selling. So why aren't we taught that in school? Why aren't we taught sort of general life skills? Why aren't we taught about money in school? Because in whatever industry you are going on into, even in the very rare occasion that it is an industry where you need to memorise a periodic table, guess what you also need to manage? Your money. And I think it's bonkers that we are not taught that, because I had no idea what a credit card was. I made the mistakes every 18-year-old did as well. I got a credit card and store cards and spent a fortune on them, and then worked out, hang on, I've got to pay this back. So I've been there, I've done that. But kids should learn about that. They should learn what mortgages, they should learn how taxes work. They should learn how to budget. They should learn how to balance a checking account. But that's not taught. So, and it's something, I mean, I've been in a few schools, I've done talks at schools with sort of older kids in sort of year 11, sixth forms, and they've taken a lot of value from that. And I agree with you. I don't think that the teachers should be talking about this, really. I think it should be external people like myself that are brought into schools. But I just think that the way the school system's created is through Ofsted and inspections. It's ticking a box. It's like they don't actually teach you many life skills at school. It's like, memorise this because you're going to take this test, because if you get an A on this test, we get outstanding on Ofsted. If we get outstanding on Ofsted, the school gets more budgets. Teachers don't have to bring their own pencils in for the kids. However, if you get a D on this test, we only get this mark, which means we don't get as much budget, which means we've got to pull PE, certain PE, got to pull swimming with the kids. We can't take the kids to the local swimming baths anymore to swim, so that's now off the curriculum. And sorry, Sharon, you need to start bringing your own pencils and pencil sharpeners in for your kids. So it's bigger than the schools. I think the system itself that needs to change.
In my opinion, the entire education system is broken. It's designed for the industrial age of like factory workers. And if you look at, say, the way technology works now with ChatGPT, you can fucking get anything you want at a click of the fingers anyway. So why do you need to memorise who won the Battle of Hastings or what the date was? Because I can find it like quicker than you can tell me. Yeah. So like it doesn't really matter anyway. With the way the system and society is built, do you think it's almost, and the tax system is potentially, it's structured against people trying to get financial freedom in terms of the way maybe it tries to push people into 9-to-5 jobs, mortgages, that type of quote unquote picket fence type of lifestyle?
In a conspiracy theorist way, or
open discussion way?
Right. Okay. I'll take my tin foil out off then. But
I'm open to conspiracies.
Yeah. I don't know. I get asked this question quite a lot, and I don't think there's any overarching conspiracy to try and stop people bettering themselves. But I suppose my counter question to that is what benefit? What does that benefit the governments? Because if people aren't saving, aren't investing, aren't protecting themselves for the future, you're going to be a burden on them in your late years anyway.
To control society more, perhaps? Because when people have money, they have freedom.
Yeah.
Which is why you see so many people, like the record amount of millionaires leaving the UK.
Yeah.
Like more than any country in the world, which is a shocking statistic.
At the moment, we Labour. I think they've done a few very silly things, and what are going to cost my family and I quite a bit of money as well. But I think like the whole sort of non-domicile status, so a bit of context around that. Historically, people that were not born in the UK, that moved to the UK, created businesses that have got other businesses and assets internationally, that was never really taxed. So they weren't taxed on worldwide income, only what they generated in the UK. That's all now coming into play. So, and I get it, that's a big tax net, but I think it'll go the other way. I think a lot of those people then will leave.
well, it's like proven whenever you try and tax really wealthy people, they have freedom of choice. Just like, well, I'm just going to go somewhere else. Yeah. So I think it's going to shoot themselves in the foot. I think in that fashion.
And that's what Dubai's done very, very well with, on the back of COVID. So the fact that Dubai opened as quickly after the COVID pandemic as it did, brought a lot of people here. When the Russia-Ukraine war started, and countries all over the world started sanctioning Russia, sort of freezing Russian assets. And I got a couple of sort of wealthy Russians that are friends of mine and clients, and the one thing that Russians got the most mistrust in is Russian banks.
Really?
Yeah. So all of a sudden, you've got all these wealthy Russians that assets are getting frozen in Europe, in UK, in US, in everywhere around the world. They don't want to put the money in Russia, and then Dubai goes, bring it here, buy property. And that's why a lot of Russian money flooded the Dubai property market over here. So again, it is very pro-business, and Dubai's very fast to act with anything like that as well.
My opinion, like Western Europe's declining quite quickly, and the Middle East, if you look at like Saudi as well, is really like rising as a power in the world.
Yeah, massively. And I think Saudi will challenge Dubai. I know Saudi's a country, Dubai's a city, but let's be honest, I think like to Riyadh and Neom and the Red Sea Resort, I think that will be challenging Dubai.
Do you think that's the strategy to almost compete? Do you think they're looking for the expats to try and move there?
Yeah, there's a lot of expats there. There's a big push for Saudization, getting a lot of the local Saudis into work there in sort of high-profile jobs, which I fully respect. But there are a lot of expats there. But like I say, I think with the vision that the leaders have brought in recently, I mean, I know Saudi Arabia really well. So when I was living in Abu Dhabi, I've been flying in and out of Saudi Arabia since about 2013, and it has changed beyond recognition. It was only in 2019, I believe from memory, that women could start driving. It was only in 2018, 2019 that you could actually go as a tourist. You could not go to Saudi Arabia pre-2018.
It's wild.
Unless you got a work visa. So again, they've brought these things in place recently, and again, it is changing massively. And again, this divides the room when I say this, but again, alcohol will come into Saudi Arabia very soon.
Well, it's the same thing as casinos coming to Dubai and UAE and Ras Al Khaimah.
Exactly.
Like money talks.
Yeah.
And I think it's the westernization of the Middle East. If you even look at like the UFC and things coming to, and all the fighting sports going to Saudi and stuff.
And I think Saudi looks at Dubai and goes, right, what do we like about that? What have they got right? And what have they maybe not got quite right? So I suppose they are now learning from Dubai's mistakes and Dubai's successes.
What
so
do you
got
think?
A blank canvas.
What do you think they could have improved on here?
I don't know, to be fair. It's a very open country. You can basically do it's an adult playground, let's be honest. It's the Vegas of the Middle East.
Disneyland for an adult.
Oh, yeah. Mate, do you know, when I moved to Abu Dhabi in 2010, and I had never drank as much alcohol since I lived in a Muslim country. Like brunching every weekend, and just, again, completely what I didn't expect. I moved to Abu Dhabi in 2010, before the F1, before anyone had ever heard of it. And I remember telling people, I'm moving to Abu Dhabi. And the amount of people like, oh, is that in Wales? No, that's Aberystwyth. But again, it was this unknown. So I expected to fly out and it'd be camels everywhere. It'd be like small, single-story, white, dusty buildings. And I got there and there were just skyscrapers all over, and it was just, this metropolitan playground. And that was back then.
You mentioned your kids earlier on. What's your plan in terms of teaching them, in terms of finances, how money works, and what's your belief in terms of like passing on like generational wealth to kids?
So I educate my kids every way I can when it comes to money. Actually, my twin boys are 6, my daughter is 3. So at a young age, it's sort of recognising what are notes, what are coins, like trying to work out the value of them. I mean, we do little things like when we go to the shop to buy sweets or chocolate, they get a budget, might be £2. And then it's a game when we're in the shop, looking at the shelf edge labels, working out if they've got enough money for that or not. They then pay for it themselves. Then they get the change given to them, and then we're outside, and I always get the receipt. And we try and count, right, is the change right? So turn that into a bit of a game. When we go to restaurants, they always pay on my card, so they're getting used to making transactions. They've got, I think it's called Rooster. So my wife banks with NatWest, and they've got like a kids account. So it actually came last week. I think you need minimum age 6 to get them. So my boys have now got, I think it's a Maestro card, like a baby debit card, what they can use for transactions now. So the kids are really excited, doing chores around the house, doing jobs, wanting to earn money so we can put money into their bank account so they can then spend that. Like Jasper in particular, like he started helping me like editing the videos and like messing about with the social media side of things. Like they love creating videos with me, especially now that they've realised that I'll pay them for it. And I'm not doing that because I need to pay them for them to do it. I'm doing it so they recognise what value is. And they recognise that, again, what value you get over this versus this. And I want to, again, also sort of teach them essentially how to sell, which, again, back to your thing, is how to make more money. I remember going to a seminar with a mentor of mine, and his daughter, she wanted this doll. And this doll worth £400. One of these like super realistic. It looks like Chucky Dog. It's horrendous to look at, but this super like realistic doll that she went after. And Paul said to her, right, raise off the money, and I'll pay the other half. And we're doing this with Jasper now, my eldest. He wants this Iron Man mask. What you press it and it opens. £200 for a mask, which is an adult size. It'll not even fit him. But we've said the same. So I'm like, right, you raise it off, and we'll raise it, and I'll give you the other half for it. So anyway, so back to Nina. So she needs to raise £200. So we had this seminar at Paul's office. There were like 50 guys there. So she's baked protein brownies for everybody, selling them £5 a pop, right? You're not going to say no to her, are you?
No.
Especially
it's
when
clever marketing.
Oh, it's genius. Especially when, and I know Paul's taught her this. She explained to everyone why she was selling these brownies.
The emotional sell.
Oh, mate, honestly. Like, we're all getting 10, 20 quid each. But again, it's things like that. It's creating that value, isn't it? And what that means from a monetary side of things. So it's that, and like things like, I've got quite a few rental properties, so whenever I have a call with a solicitor, whenever I'm going to the solicitor to meet them, not my daughter, she's a bit young at the minute, but I take the boys with me. So, do they fully understand it? No. Do I even understand it with solicitors talk? No, not all for it. But it's so the round of that environment, so it becomes, that's the normal for them. Like, what will never be normal for my kids is red letters coming through the door. Because kids copy what you do, not what you say. I've always been a massive believer in this. And you are the best or the worst role model for your children, because they pick up on everything that you do.
Everything is what you're exposed to, and it's your field of awareness, particularly from like before the age of 13.
Yeah.
Create your internal belief system.
Yeah. Why do obese parents have obese kids? Which is a very unpopular opinion, but no, it's not genetics. It's because of the lifestyle you lead, and they grow up seeing that as normal. It's exactly the same with money.
We talk about protecting wealth. One of the big things is obviously inheritance tax. And there's two questions I want to ask on that. It's one, if you have parents who have money, how would you protect against you getting stuck with the big inheritance tax bill? And then secondly, what are your plans in terms of passing stuff down to your kids? Do you believe in using trusts or?
Yeah. So there's 3 ways to reduce inheritance tax bill. 4 ways to reduce inheritance tax bill. One is spend it. Right? The best way, just spend it. Second is gifting it. So giving it away to your kids, to charities. But obviously there's limits on that, what you can do. Third way is by trust planning. Or the fourth way, you can actually take an insurance policy out to cover that tax bill. Obviously each one's got different pros, different cons. I've got properties, I've got a property portfolio within a limited company. So as it stands now, so I'm a shareholder, my wife's a shareholder, and we've got a trust, which is also a shareholder with the children as the beneficiaries from that. So again, as we're building that property portfolio, essentially the assets that are held by this trust are increasing in value, even though my wife and I are not losing any control of that company. Excuse me. That will go to the kids outside of our estates. That will reduce the inheritance tax bill. I was paying into pensions every year, maximum pension allowance, which sat outside from an inheritance tax point of view, which Labour have kindly changed that. Thanks, Keir Starmer. So I'm going to now work out what we're going to do with that moving forward. So there's trust planning. There's also insurance policies. So I've got quite a large life insurance policy in place that, should I die, that will then essentially, the insurance policy I've worked out will pay all the mortgages off on all my buy-to-lets. It will give my wife and kids an income, and it will cover any inheritance tax bill that once my wife goes, because it's on the second death, so Laura gets everything, and then it's when she dies, that's when the kids pay inheritance tax. All that will be taken care of.
You mentioned property. With property, do you think, obviously your wealth will appreciate faster over time if you mortgage everything?
1,000%.
Do you think that's the best thing to do, or do you think, say you had £1 million, you go buy your own house to live in, £1 million outright, or do you think you try and mortgage that, or do you think you'd actually be better off just renting a house to live in?
So, two things I would say with that. So, I've got numerous rental properties. All my rental properties, the mortgages on those are in interest only, which basically means I'll never pay that debt off. I'll just keep remortgaging that debt. I've got a mortgage on my main residence, on my home. That is the only mortgage I will ever pay off, which I think it's unless I overpay it, which I probably won't, that'll be cleared when I'm 53. So that's the only mortgage I will ever pay off, because that's my home, that's where I want to live. So when I get to my financial freedom age, which for me is 55, do I think I'll stop working at 55? No, because I can't see still for 5 minutes. But that's when, again, I'm in a position where I work because I want to work, not because I have to work. All my buy-to-let properties, those, I do the same thing on everyone. I get a 25% deposit, 75% interest-only mortgage. I do that so it keeps the payments down. So every property that I own is cash flow positive, i.e. it pays me money instead of me paying towards it. So let's say on average each property pays me £200 a month after mortgage, service charge, letting agents fees and tax. If I had all of those properties on repayment, so I'm actually paying that debt down, instead of all those paying me £200 a month, I will be paying them for £500 a month. Now that negates the investment side of things a couple of ways. One, it means that it puts a lot more strain on my day job, because all of a sudden I need to earn £6,000 a month just to service these mortgages before I've even earned a penny from my day job or paid a bill or done anything else. So it adds additional stress for me. Secondly, it slows down the rate of what I'm going to buy more properties. Because if every property I invest in, that's another £500 a month it's going to cost me. That's another £500 a month it's going to cost me. Instead of, I buy another property now and that's an additional, like I say, it's not a lot, it's only £200, £300, but that's an additional couple £100 a month income net that's going to generate. I don't touch that stays in the company, which then builds up and used by the next one and so on and so forth. And the other benefit of a mortgage as well is you're just using the bank's money to leverage your returns. So again, nice and easy maths. Let's say I buy a £400,000 property and I put £100,000 down as a deposit and I get a mortgage for 300. That's going to pay me net bit of rent, but let's not even put that aside. Let's just go on the property value increasing. So the value of that property increases by 25% over the next 6 years. So it goes from 400 grand to 500 grand. I've doubled my money. Because remember, I only put 100 grand down. And again, so if I then sold that in 6 years' time, I strip out my 100 grand plus the 100 grand profit that I've made, doubled your cash. But the downside then is I need to find somewhere else to put that money again. So what I do with mine is once it's grown up to the 500,000, remortgage that property back up to 75% of the new value.
Just pull the equity out.
And use that to buy another. So, and if you really understand this with property, it's a great way of building wealth. So you buy one today, in 5-6 years without putting any more cash down, you turn that one into two. In 12 years, you do the same thing again. But remember, you now got two. So you turn that 2 into 4, and the 4 into 8, and so on and so forth. So that's a great way of using the bank's money just to continuously leverage your returns.
Do you think people should focus buying property in the UK, or do you think it's a good idea to look at somewhere like Dubai? Because obviously there's faster probably appreciation of property prices here. Like I bought First apartment I bought here in 2021 doubled in 3 years, which is insane. A lot of that's probably unusual scenario, some of the Russian stuff that's happened and a huge influx of people coming here. And it obviously depends where your tax domicile is, obviously a big part of that. But do you think the UK market has a lot of legroom to go? So my background is I used to be a letting agent. So like,
all right, okay.
I know there's a lot of complications in terms of with regulations and issues with tenants that can also happen and arise in the UK, probably why you're seeing solicitors, which is less likely maybe to occur here.
Okay. So I'm probably the most hated man in Dubai real estate, by the way, which happened by accident. I put a video out last year talking about my opinion on the Dubai real estate. And
this will be good.
As we all know how loud those guys are.
Yeah.
So I got attacked quite personally. So every time I talk about that now, funnily enough, like they all come out of the woodwork. There's actually reaction videos made about me on a regular basis, which makes me laugh. But look, my view... Okay, here we go, you're going to get cancelled again here. So my view on the Dubai real estate market, yes, there's been a lot of growth here. I can't help but feel that there's going to be a correction at some point here. There's a lot of new units coming up on the market, which again, more supply, not as much demand potentially. That could affect the market. And I also can't look past the fact that the amount of Russian money that is here. And my question is, when this war ends, which it will at some point, and all of a sudden, because look, let's be honest, we need Russia more than Russia need us back in the UK and most countries around the world for their natural resources.
As much as we don't want to miss it.
Yeah, as much, nobody will admit it, but we do, let's be honest. So the second that war ends, UK, Europe, Canada, US, countries all over the world are going to drop sanctions on Russia like a hot stone. Don't care what anybody's saying. At that point, all of a sudden, Mr. Mrs. Wealthy Russian, the world is your oyster again. My question at that point is, does some of this Russian money that is here leave as quick as it came in? If it does, what effect will that then have on the markets? So I do believe at some point there is going to be a correction here. When is the $1 million question? I think it may be sped up now that Donald Trump's in power, because I think if anybody can get this war to an end, it's him. Because he's not frightened of having those uncomfortable conversations. If you believe what you read, he's got as solid a relationship as anyone could have with Putin. So we'll see what happens there.
Would you advise people maybe then try and balance a property portfolio across the UK and the UAE? And it'll be a question for you actually. So if I am a UAE resident and start buying real estate in the UK, what's the tax implications for that? And then is it difficult to get a mortgage as a foreigner, If you know who you're dealing with, no. So, and this is something that I help a lot of clients with. So, in the UK, you get a UK income tax allowance, 12.5 grand a year. So depending on your circumstances, sometimes your first property, it's more beneficial buying it in your own name, depending on what your plans are in the future, if you intend to return back. After that, it's usually better to do it like I do, hold it within a limited company structure. Yes, you may pay a little bit of corporation tax, but it's a lot more tax efficient than holding them in your personal name. And there are a lot of lenders that will lend to non-UK residents and non-UK resident directors of companies in the UK. I've got a fantastic mortgage broker that does that on a daily basis for myself and my clients. But speaking to your high street bank, you're probably not going to get you the answer that you want, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. I can't get a mortgage in the UK. I'm like, right, who have you spoke to? Well, HSBC. Right, that's why. Yeah, but bank with them. Yeah, but no, it's a little bit more specialist than that. So you need to know who to deal with, really. But yes, it's definitely possible. And yeah, I mean, like I say, have a balance of both. But the other thing what a lot of people either fail to understand or just choose not to believe as well is that your UAE property portfolio is only tax-free while you're living here. So if you move back to the UK tomorrow and you sell your UAE property the day after, you're going to pay UK capital gains tax on any gain that you've made on that. You're also going to start paying UK income tax on any worldwide income that you've got. So again, if you're not looking at staying here for the long term and going back to the UK in maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that is not the most tax efficient thing for you to do. It may be more tax efficient for you to look at UK property now. Granted, if you're going to live here for the next 20, 30 years, well, yeah, you can't get much more tax efficient than tax free.
But it all depends on what your plans are for the future. And I say the same thing to people that are buying a property, they're living in Dubai as well. I get asked all the time, should I rent or should I buy? So it depends how long you're going to stay here. If you're going to stay here a couple of years, rent. Yes, it's going to cost you money, but just call it an expat tax. Get on with it. Because you've got up to 8% fees, DLD and everything else when you're buying. And in the next 2 years, toss a coin. Market could be up, market could be down. However, if you're looking at staying 10 years, over the next 10 years, even, and I don't think it will be, but even if the market is 20% lower than what it is today, over that 10 years, you've been paying your own mortgage off instead of someone else's. So you'll still be better off.
Do you think then, like a lot of people, for example, are a big believer in terms of just like owning the home? Would you be against people renting, or do you think if you're not sure where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years' time, you should definitely go into rental units, particularly in Dubai, where, in my opinion, it's not great allocation of resources. It's difficult to get a mortgage here if you have your own business, which is digital business, and you don't have a registered office landline, which is why to buy these properties cash, which is a pain in the arse. You don't necessarily want to have to sink like 7 figures into a house that's just going to sit there and do nothing. Obviously, it's going to appreciate, but it's not paying you anything.
Yeah. I think, short term, 3 to 5 years, I would rent. We rented in Abu Dhabi. In hindsight, would I have been better off buying? Probably, yeah, because we were there for 10 years. But we did what most people do. We'll go for a year, see if we like it. Then 1 year's turned into 3. We'll do another couple of years, and then 5 years turned into 10. So again, we didn't have that definitive sort of end goal in mind when we were there, which was why we never bought.
Do you have any concerns over the next 5-6 years of the way the world is changing very quickly with things like AI and stuff disrupting the economy very heavily? Because if you look at, say, like one of the biggest occupation jobs in the world is going to be completely replaced, which is like drivers, like taxi drivers, delivery drivers. How do you think that could affect things? And do you think that's another reason why people should be very cautious in terms of trying to like build wealth to protect themselves as quickly as possible?
I mean, look, AI, you either embrace it and it'll make your life a hell of a lot better, or you deny it and you're going to be out of work at some point. So I think AI is what tractors did to farming 100 years ago.
Replace the plough.
Yeah. AI is what computers did in the 90s when we were growing up, sort of thing. Like, it can make your life a hell of a lot better if you embrace it and if you learn it. And the early adopters are the ones that are going to get the most benefit. And again, with people are always going to buy from people. Like, again, I think we spoke about this earlier. Like, in my opinion, the top of any industry, that AI will only make your life better. If you're lazy and you're not willing to learn and you're not willing to adapt, then chances are you probably will be out of work at some point. But it's all on how you, again, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens for you. I see it as a massive blessing for now, but we'll see what changes.
With 2025 around the corner, what would be your best piece of financial advice to finish up for next year?
Have a structured plan in place. So know what you're earning, know what you're spending. Save and then spend, so pay yourself first. And when it comes to investing, like I said, just work out what your goals are. So work out what those goals are, then funnel that back to today. And that'll very quickly expose you. So you know, am I on track? Am I doing enough? And if I'm not doing enough, what needs to give?
Cool, that's some great advice. Where's the best place for people to find out more about you, Joe?
Instagram, so Joe_FamilyWealth101. So I put daily content out on there.
You've also got a YouTube channel you're building.
I have got a YouTube channel, Family Wealth 101 on YouTube, which we're working on at the minute with my new videographer. So there will be a lot more content going out on that come January. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn as all financial advisors are. So Joe Woodhouse. Cool.
We'll drop all the links below. I hope you guys took a ton of value from that. If you did, make sure you tag myself, Joe, share him on Instagram. If you could leave us a 5-star review on the podcast app, subscribe on YouTube, and see you next episode very soon.
Cool. Thank you.
It's great, dude. Thank you.